Hello everyone and welcome back to Scary Story. Tonight I want to tell you about something that happened to my friend Liam. He's a paramedic and you can imagine the kinds of things he sees on the job. But this one story, this one call, is different. It's the one he can't explain. The one that still makes his skin crawl when he talks about it. It all started on a cold, rainy night in October. The kind of night where the wind howls and the rain beats against the windows like tiny, frantic fingers. Liam and his partner Sarah were near the end of a grueling 12-hour shift. They were exhausted, running on fumes and lukewarm coffee, just counting down the minutes until they could head home. They were parked in a quiet residential area, the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers, the only sound, when the radio crackled to life. The call was for a respiratory distress at an old disused industrial estate on the edge of town. Liam knew the place. It was a sprawling complex of decaying warehouses and rusted machinery, a place that had been abandoned for decades. He and Sarah exchanged a look. It was a strange location for a medical emergency. Who would be out there, especially on a night like this? But a call is a call, so they flipped on the lights and sirens and sped off into the darkness. As they got closer, the neatly paved suburban roads gave way to a pitted, broken track. The ambulance bounced and rattled, its headlights cutting through the thick, driving rain. The industrial estate looked even more menacing up close. The buildings were like skeletal remains, with shattered windows that looked like empty eye sockets staring out into the storm. A high, chain-link fence, topped with barbed wire, surrounded the entire compound. Most of it was rusted through, but the main gate was chained and padlocked. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7, Sarah said into the radio. "We're at the location, but the gate is locked. We have no access." A moment of static, then the dispatcher's voice came back, sounding a little confused. "Unit 7, the caller stated the gate would be open. They said to proceed to Warehouse 14. Liam and Sarah looked at each other again. The gate was definitely not open. A heavy, ancient-looking chain was wrapped around the bars, secured by a padlock that looked like it had been there since the place was built. "This is getting weird," Liam muttered. He got out of the ambulance, the cold rain immediately soaking through his uniform. He pulled on the chain. It didn't budge. He shone his powerful flashlight around the perimeter. About 20 yards down, a section of the fence had collapsed, creating a gap just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "Looks like we're going in on foot," he called to Sarah. They grabbed their main response bag, the defibrillator, and their flashlights, and made their way to the opening. Stepping through the broken fence felt like crossing into another world. The noise of the city faded away, replaced by the howling wind and the creaking of rusted metal. The air was heavy with the smell of damp, decay, and something else, something metallic and vaguely unpleasant. Their flashlight beams danced across the crumbling facades of the warehouses. The numbers on the buildings were faded and peeling. Warehouse 9, Warehouse 10. They were heading deeper into the labyrinth of decay. The ground was a mess of mud, weeds, and debris. Every shadow seemed to move, and every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. "This place gives me the creeps," Sarah said, her voice tight. "Who calls 911 and then locks the gate?" "I don't know, but let's find our patient and get out of here," Liam replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Finally, they saw it. Warehouse 14. It was larger than the others, a hulking, dark shape against the stormy sky. One of the massive metal sliding doors was ajar, a dark slice of blackness in the grey wall. "Hello? Paramedics?" Liam shouted, his voice swallowed by the wind. There was no reply, just a relentless drumming of the rain on the metal roof. They approached the open door cautiously. Liam shone his light inside. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a vast, cavernous space. It was filled with old machinery, covered in thick tarps, and even thicker layers of dust. Cobwebs as big as dinner plates hung from the ceiling. The place was a tomb. "Hello? Is anyone in here?" Sarah called out. Her voice echoed eerily in the huge space. Still nothing. They stepped inside, the atmosphere immediately growing colder, the air still and heavy. They swept their lights back and forth, illuminating rusted catwalks high above and piles of discarded junk on the floor. There was no sign of a patient, no sleeping bag, no campfire, no evidence that anyone had been living there at all. "Dispatch, Unit 7, Liam said into his personal radio. "We're inside Warehouse 14. There's no one here. It's completely empty." "Unit 7, can you confirm?" the dispatcher asked. The caller was very specific. They said they were having trouble breathing. They sounded very distressed. "We've searched the main floor. Dispatch." "There's nobody," Liam insisted. Just as he said it, they heard a noise. A soft, shuffling sound from the far corner of the warehouse, hidden behind a towering piece of machinery. Liam and Sarah immediately tensed, their training kicking in. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered. Liam nodded, his heart starting to pound a little faster. They moved towards the sound, their flashlight beams converging on the dark corner. "Paramedics, we're here to help you. Can you tell us what's wrong?" Liam called out. As they rounded the corner of the machine, their lights fell upon a figure. It was a man, or what looked like a man, huddled on the floor. He was wearing old-fashioned work overalls, the kind you might have seen a factory worker wear 50 years ago. They were tattered and stained. His face was turned away from them, and he was rocking back and forth, making a low, rasping sound. It sounded like he was struggling for every breath. "Sir, my name is Liam. This is my partner Sarah. We're paramedics. We're here to help you," Liam said, approaching slowly. "Can you tell me your name?" The man didn't respond. He just kept rocking, his breathing a wet, ragged noise that sent a shiver down Liam's spine. Sarah knelt down beside him, trying to get a look at his face. "Sir, we need to check you over. Are you hurt?" As she reached out to touch his shoulder, the man suddenly stopped rocking. He slowly, very slowly, turned his head towards them. And that's when the night went from strange to terrifying. The man's face, it wasn't right. His skin was a pale, almost translucent grey, stretched taut over his cheekbones. His eyes were wide and staring, but they were filmed over, a milky white, like he was blind. But the worst part was his mouth. It was open in a silent scream. And as they watched, a thin, dark liquid, like old oil, began to trickle from the corners of his lips. Sarah recoiled, letting out a small gasp. Liam froze, his flashlight beam fixed on the man's horrifying face. All the medical scenarios he'd ever trained for flew out of his head. This wasn't in any textbook. This wasn't a normal patient. The man didn't seem to notice them. His gaze was fixed on something far away, something they couldn't see. He started rocking again, and the rasping sound grew louder, more desperate. It didn't sound like a medical issue anymore. It sounded like pure agony. What is he?" Sarah whispered, her face pale. Liam, shaking himself out of his shark, tried to regain his composure. "I don't know, but he needs help." He tried to do a basic assessment. "Sir, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." He reached for the man's hand. The moment his fingers made contact, an intense, bone-deep cold shot up his arm. It was like plunging his hand into a bucket of ice. He snatched it back instinctively. The man's skin wasn't just cold. It felt like it was actively draining the heat from him. Suddenly the man's head snapped towards Liam. His milky eyes seemed to focus directly on him. The rasping stopped. The entire warehouse fell silent, except for the rain. A new sound started, a low guttural whisper that seemed to come from deep within the man's chest. It was just one word, repeated over and over. "Get out! Get out!" Liam and Sarah scrambled backwards, their hearts hammering against their ribs. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. "Dispatch, we need police backup at this location immediately. We have a hostile individual," Liam stammered into his radio, not knowing how else to describe what he was seeing. The figure slowly, stiffly began to get to its feet. It moved with a jerky, unnatural motion, like a marionette with tangled strings. It was tall, much taller than it had looked sitting down. As it rose, a musty, earthy smell filled the air, the smell of a freshly dug grave. It took a step towards them, then another, its bare feet making no sound on the concrete floor. The dark liquid was now flowing freely from its mouth, dripping onto the front of its overalls. "We need to go! Now!" Sarah yelled, pulling on Liam's arm. They turned and ran. They didn't look back. They sprinted through the vast warehouse, their boots echoing in the terrifying silence. They burst out of the open door and back into the cleansing rain, gasping for breath. They didn't stop running until they squeezed back through the collapsed fence and were safely back in the ambulance, locking the doors behind them. They sat there for a moment, hearts pounding, rain lashing the windshield, trying to process what they had just seen. A few minutes later, 2 police cars arrived, their blue and red lights flashing, cutting through the darkness. Liam and Sarah explained the situation, feeling foolish, trying to describe the ghostly figure, the unnatural cold, the impossible face. The officers, skeptical but professional, got their bolt cutters, snapped the lock on the gate, and went in to search the warehouse. Liam and Sarah waited, the ambulance engine rumbling. After about 20 minutes, the officers came back. They had searched warehouse 14 from top to bottom. They'd checked the catwalks, behind all the machinery, every nook and cranny. There was no one there. No patient, no hostile individual, no footprints in the dust other than Liam's and Sarah's. There was no sign that anyone had been in that warehouse for a very, very long time. There's no official record of the incident. The call was logged as a hoax, a false alarm. But Liam knows what he saw. He can still feel that deathly cold on his hand. He can still see those milky white eyes and hear that desperate, rasping breath. He looked up the history of the industrial estate later. Decades ago, a worker had been killed in a tragic accident. In Warehouse 14, he'd been caught in a piece of machinery. The official report said he was crushed and his last moments would have been spent struggling to breathe. Liam doesn't take many night shifts anymore, and whenever he drives past that abandoned estate, he can't help but glance at the dark, silent shape of Warehouse 14, and he wonders if that poor soul is still in there, forever reliving his final, agonizing moments, and forever calling for a help that can never arrive. Thanks for listening to tonight's scary story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Sleep well.